The highest number of coronavirus infections in the city. The health department clarifies it's not after mass testing. Rather, it's pushing for expanded targeted testing for COVID-19. Commuters might soon have to write down their personal and contact details when they board public buses. And Meralco explains why your bill for the month of May has jumped. Cavite decided to issue stricter guidelines for malls after most of them apparently failed to implement post-ECQ measures over the weekend. Dale De Vera reports.
The Cavite LGU shut down all malls on Monday, but it recalled that order earlier today. Under the amended guidelines issued by Cavite Governor John Vic Remulla, mall hours will be set from 10 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon. Only one entrance and one exit door will be opened. Social distancing should strictly be observed within the premises of establishments. Quarantine passes will be required to enter the mall, and company IDs and travel passes will not be honored. In addition, a quota will be imposed on the number of people inside the mall, and a time card will be given to shoppers. They have an hour to do their business, except when inside the supermarket. Music won't be played over the PA systems to discourage people from loitering inside the mall. Intertown mall goers will not be allowed. This means if a person lives in Dasmariñas, he is only allowed to go to malls in his city. Exemptions will be given to residents of Cavite City, Noveleta and Kawit who may go to a mall in Rosario. Residents of Mendez, Alfonso, Amadeo, Magallanes and Barangay Cabangaan in Silang may buy their essentials in Tagaytay City, while those who live in GMA Cavite may go to a mall in Carmona. Entry and exit points to the mall should be controlled. Supermarkets, food shops, drugstores, and hardware stores with own entrance and exits will have to let their customers pass through the main entrance and exit of the mall. Some residents agree with these new guidelines.
Pag hindi po higpitan, mas lalong padami, di ba?
Nakakaperviso pero kahit na nakakaperviso, kung namang maano ka sa COVID, buti na yung sara na.
Tama lang yun para hindi na kumalat ang COVID dito sa 13. Para hindi na dumami ang nagkakasakit. Para hindi matitigas ang ulo ng mga tao.
Despite the stricter measures, Governor Remulla says if the mall policy will be followed, he might consider lifting the liquor ban in the province. For News 5, Dale De Vera, we're One News.
The health department reiterates the importance of contact tracing in the country's fight against COVID-19. Greg Gregorio has the story.
The health department admitted that the government has no program for mass testing. Instead, what's in place is just the expanded or targeted testing.
We tried to veer away with this term na mass testing kasi gusto naming isipin ng mga tao that this is not indiscriminate testing. Kasi pag sinabi mo mass testing, iniisip ng mga tao buong populasyon ng Pilipinas, which is not the case. Ang expanded testing po, yun pa rin po, tayo ay magfo-focus dun sa mga taong kailangang i-test talaga.
Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeres said that at the onset of the pandemic, only those belonging to the vulnerable population and those with severe and critical conditions were subject to COVID-19 testing. Later on, those who exhibited mild symptoms and those without any symptoms but have exposure history were also included. Vergeres explained that the agency's funds are limited, so they really have to screen those who will be tested. Aside from expanded testing, the department has to work into their budget the provision for PPE sets for the country's frontliners. The health official says they're also boosting contact tracing because it allows the government to work on science and evidence-based measures to curb the spread of COVID-19.
Even though we do not have any test, maaari na po tayong mag-trace ng contacts natin kasi alam naman po natin kung sino yung may simptomas, kung sino yung pinagsususpetsahan natin.
Over in Cebu City, Mayor Edgardo Labella says extensive contact tracing allowed them to easily locate and isolate those who were exposed to the virus. Labella says this is partly the reason why they have over 1,500 positive cases in the city, the highest in Central Visayas. The city has employed a teams of contact tracers, comprising of personnel from the DOH Regional Office, the City Health Office, barangay health workers, and even PNP personnel.
In our project Balikuhay, we're in three local governments, City, Mandaue, and Lapu-Lapu, together with the cooperation of the respective chambers of commerce to come up with an idea wherein after we shall have studied and take the 10% threshold, we can somehow relax and maybe move from the enhanced quarantine.
National Privacy Commissioner Raymond Liboro says even though there are limitations to the disclosure of patient information, this should not get in the way of contact tracing.
Under dito po sa 113.332 po natin, kailangan pong sabihin ng isang pasyente at kailangan din pong magamit yung data po niya. Hindi ho kailangan ng consent po ng patient to be for the DOH to do that. Again, but that is again the realm of yung public health authority po natin ang gumagamit po dyan.
As of May 14, there are over 38,000 contact tracers in the country. The health department and LGUs are always on the lookout for more people who can join the team. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
Now that some industries have been allowed to reopen, employees are finding out that getting to work is way different than what they were used to. Carlo Castillo has more on that story.
Vehicles continue to fill EDSA on the second workday for some businesses in the metro. With public transportation still suspended, many workers are left with no choice but to bike to work or just walk. This is the new normal for Nelson Rosales, who started this day early because he had to walk from Caloocan to Cubao, where he's working at a factory.
Umaga po. O mga 6.
Anong oras ang pasok doon sa Cubao?
Alas 9 po.
Alas 9.
Ano sir, kailangan eh.
Trabaho.
Okay.
Para may pangkain din, ano?
Some cities, though, are allowing tricycles to operate. This group of tricycle drivers near a shopping mall in Quezon City are glad to be back on the road, even if they're only limited to carrying just one passenger.
Okay na rin po sir kasi kahit pa paano makakapasada po kami, may konting panggastos.
Bawal po ang bawal ang dalawa, isa lang.
Bawal ang dalawa, bawal ang tatlo.
Bawal, isa lang talaga sakay.
There's a caveat though. Tricycles in QC are only allowed to operate twice per week to limit drivers' exposure to the virus and to avoid traffic congestion.
1,000 yung unit namin. Bali, ang babiyahe sa Lunes hanggang Biyernes, tagto 200 lang po. Tapos palitin Sabado-Linggo, 500, hahatiin po yung 1,000.
Face masks are now becoming a part of our daily lives, as much as social distancing has become the norm. Now that the new quarantine rules have allowed limited movements in some areas, it looks like biking or walking to work is turning out to be the new normal for the labor force. Unless, of course, you're part of the lucky ones who have been provided with shuttle services by your company. For News 5, Carlo Castillo, we are One News.
Public transport remains suspended in Metro Manila as the nation's capital is still under a modified enhanced community quarantine. But transport agencies are already preparing strategies for mass travel once NCR moves to General Community Quarantine or GCQ. MMDA spokesperson Celine Pialago says they will run a single route on EDSA. Buses that will be using this major highway may only travel between Monumento in Caloocan and the Mall of Asia in Pasay City. The MMDA expects that with this in place, the number of public buses traveling along EDSA will be cut to just around 600 daily from the previous 2,500 each day. The agency is also looking at reducing bus stops along the thoroughfare, as well as moving the bus lane on the left side of the road. We'll pause for a short break, but when the big story returns, writing down your personal data may soon become the norm on public buses. And Meralco explains why your bill for May has spiked. I'm Jess De Los Santos, and you're watching The Big Story. The Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board has called on bus operators to register for routes around the metro when it transitions to General Community Quarantine or GCQ. The agency is also requiring PUV drivers and conductors to keep a record of their passengers for contact tracing purposes. Gerard De La Peña with the story.
More vehicles are out in the metro after the nation's capital moved to a modified ECQ. The MMDA notes private vehicles along EDSA have increased to around by as much as 40% to 100,000 cars daily compared to the ECQ period. While this is a far cry from the 410,000 cars that passed through EDSA before the lockdown, the agency is strictly screening motorists to make sure that only frontliners and essential workers are out on the road.
So kailangan pong tiyakin na yung laman po ng mga shuttle services ay sumusunod sa social distancing. Pangalawa, dapat po lahat ng sakay, lahat ng pasahero ng nasabing shuttle services ay empleyado po ng nasabing kumpanya. Hindi po pwede, ma'am, na nalimutan niya yung ID, hindi niya dala.
Meanwhile, the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board is calling on operators to register their buses so that they could operate during GCQ. But there will be a few changes that operators must be aware of. Drivers and conductors, as well as passengers, are required to wear face masks. Digital payments are encouraged but may still collect fares if they don't have automatic fare collection systems like beep cards and online payment apps. There should also be thermal scanners and constant disinfection of vehicles. Social distancing must be observed inside buses. They're only allowed to carry 50% of their usual capacity. Buses are also required to get passengers' personal details, including phone numbers, for contact tracing purposes upon boarding.
Halimbawa, ikaw sumasakay ka ng eroplano, ganoon din naman, kinukuha yung pangalan mo. Yun po ang address mo, no? So, anong diferensya, no, na yung sasakyan mo yung land transportation na kukunin yung pangalan mo at yung address, no?
But passengers have mixed reactions on the matter.
Personal mo na yun eh. Dapat hindi pwede yun eh. So ID lang sana, okay lang. Pero kung mga number, hindi na.
Siguro for safety lang din po. Mas okay na din po yun, pero yun nga lang po, medyo baka pagka nagmamadali po tayo, baka mali tayo sa trabaho.
Jeepney drivers and operators are also asking the government to allow them to operate soon. William Ladrera has set up plastic barriers inside his jeepney in case they get the green light to start tying the roads once again.
Dahil hirap na po talaga. 2 buwan na mahigit na wala talaga kaming natatanggap pa anong galing sa LTFRB.
The LTFRB also said it would promote the use of cashless transactions for toll payments to limit physical contact between tellers and drivers. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, we are One News.
Daily coronavirus infections in the country have remained above 200 for the past few days. As of 4 p.m. on Tuesday, the Health Department reported 224 new cases. Total cases are now nearing 13,000. The virus has killed 6 people overnight. The national death toll still stands at over 800. At least 100 people recovered from COVID-19 in the past 24 hours. So far, almost 3,000 patients have survived SARS-CoV-2. The lower house drops the bill seeking to grant ABS-CBN provisional franchise until October. House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano explains that this is because House Bill 6732 has caused divisiveness among lawmakers. Instead, Cayetano says the lower house will proceed with the hearings on bills granting the network a full 25-year franchise. Meanwhile, ABS-CBN says the longer they stay off the air, the more probable that retrenchment will likely happen.
We made a commitment to our employees, given the difficult economic situation following COVID-19. We made a commitment to them that we would not take away any jobs for 3 months. We continue to lose a substantial amount of money every month, Your Honor, and I'm afraid that if we cannot get back on air soon, by August we may already have to consider beginning a retrenchment process.
Long lines and rain greeted customers at the Meralco Business Center along Commonwealth Avenue in Quezon City. Most of them have lined up for more than 2 hours to settle their dues, while others wanted answers as to why their bills for the month of May have skyrocketed. Shaila Francisco has the rest of the story.
Jenny Rufino was shocked when she received this month's charge, a whopping 13,000 pesos from her usual 2,500 to 2,600 pesos.
Tatanong ko po kung bakit ganun po kalaki yung bill namin. Wala naman po kaming aircon eh. Kumbaga gamit lang namin freezer tsaka lang po ilaw, electric fan. Saan po kami kukuha ng pambayad, ganun. Kaya wala pa naman po kaming trabaho, lockdown din po eh.
The Energy Regulatory Commission has ordered Meralco to explain the basis in calculating consumption of its customers over the past 3 months. The Department of Energy has also asked the distributor to explain the spike in charges.
Ikinagulat din po natin yan dahil sa dami po ng tawag na natanggap ng aming Consumer Welfare and Promotion Office. Sinulatan namin ng Meralco, humihingi po kami sa kanila ng paliwanag. And as soon as we receive the reply of Meralco, we will let the public know.
Even the House of Representatives has filed a resolution ordering an investigation into the matter. Meralco says that they are ready for any investigation.
We are open and we are ready to explain, if needed, the rates that or the electricity bills that we release to the public. Ang sinundan lang naman po namin dito ay yung order na regulator. We followed it to the letter.
With meter reading halted during the start of the ECQ, charges for March and April bills were based on the household's average consumption in the last 3 months, which are considered low consumption months. But when meter reading resumed this month, the current bill already included the actual consumption for the month, as well as consumption in March and April that were not charged by Meralco. The spike was also aggravated by the COVID-19 pandemic that forced most residents to stay home and the summer months when usage is typically higher.
Historically, yung mga bills last year para yung hagdanan. Unang tataas yung March, onset of summer, mag-i-intensify yung taas ng April dahil ayan na, mas mainit na yung panahon at pinakamataas usually yung May. Kaya lang ang nangyari ngayon dahil hindi nga nabasa yung March at April, yung dapat konsumong pumasok doon na nabasa na Metro, napunta lahat sa Mayo. But actually, kung titingnan mo yung March at April, meron dapat doon pumasok na hindi kumarga dahil differential billing nga ang ginamit, yung tinatawag na estimated billing.
Meralco says the overall cost for May is actually cheaper by 35 centavos per kilowatt hour due to lower generation charge. The DOE is also asking Meralco why its customers are charged with a 47 peso convenience fee when paying through the company's app.
Parang hindi po naging convenience ito, parang naging isang pabigat sa bulsa ng ating mga consumers. Kaya tinitingnan din po natin ito.
Meralco says convenience fees are charged by online payment service providers, not by the company. Meralco says customers can always choose other payment options if they refuse to pay the convenience fee.
We will be submitting our response sa DOE inquiry dun sa 47 pesos fee. Yung online fees nito ay hindi po Meralco fees at hindi po pumupunta sa Meralco. Ito po yung fees na charge ng online payment services provider for using the platform or system.
Shaila Francisco, we are One News.
We'll be back with more stories after the break. Stay with us here on One News. I'm Jess De Los Santos and you're watching The Big Story. A barangay in Caloocan is under hard lockdown over rising COVID-19 cases. Residents in the barangay are also finding different means to beat the summer heat amid the lockdown. Marian Enriquez with the details.
Barangay 12 Dagat-Dagatan in Caloocan was placed under hard lockdown for 6 days, starting Sunday night, after recording the highest number of coronavirus infections in the city, at 33 on Monday evening. But this might still expand after city workers took swab samples on Monday of more than 120 persons who were either in close contact with positive patients or residents who are showing signs and symptoms of the disease. While waiting for the lockdown to be lifted, the 35,000 residents are confined to their homes, except for essential workers. So to battle the boredom and the summer heat, some of them got creative. This family set up a pool right in their garage to cool down.
Mainit po. Ito na lang ginawa namin option. Mainit po kasi bawal lumabas eh. Swimming na lang tayo.
Meanwhile, this sari-sari store was open despite the lockdown order. But the owner clarified she wasn't selling anything.
Sobrang maliit po kasi masyado yung place namin. May mga bata rito eh. Mainit eh. Tinutubuan na nga po ng mga maliliit na pigsa sa ulo eh, sa sobrang init. Kaya binubuksan namin.
The barangay is also implementing a system called Pasabay or Pabili, where residents can text barangay officers to buy food, medicine, and other essential goods for them. A jeep palengke also goes around the barangay, so residents can order fresh supplies of vegetables and meat. Their items will be delivered right at their door. But for other residents, like Femia Bustos, who's living with her children and grandkids, they will just have to ration the 5 kilos of rice and whatever's left of their vegetables to feed 7 families in her home.
Nakakaraos naman po kahit paano. Kaya lang talagang wala na po siguro. Baka isang araw, 2 araw na lang po siguro. Talagang hindi na po, wala na po kami susuporta sa namin eh.
Barangay officials meanwhile urge residents to cooperate and obey rules to prevent another lockdown.
Sa 156, siguro sa matitigas din ng ulo doon, nag-extend sila ng 5 days. Dapat nga 3 days, naging 8 days. So sabi ko nga sa kanila, kung talagang pagpipilitan nila yung katigasan ng ulo nila, malaking chance na ma-extend itong lockdown natin.
For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
This just in, President Duterte declares May 25 a regular holiday throughout the country in observance of Eid al-Fitr. The said event marks the end of the month-long Ramadan for the Muslims. The Archdiocese of Manila is urging the Interagency Task Force to trust religious organizations that they can enforce social distancing inside places of worship. Representatives of religious sects were invited to a meeting so they could express their sentiments over the task force's decision to partly allow religious gatherings in MECQ and GCQ areas. In an interview with 1PH, Father Jerome Siciliano said the Archdiocese is hoping that the limits on attendees may be loosened. So far, only 5 attendees are allowed in religious gatherings in areas under MECQ and 10 attendees for gatherings in GCQ areas.
Well, they have to trust the priest and then the organization sa loob ng simbahan na mag-enforce ng social distancing. Sa pag-uusap ng TWG kahapon, gawin na lang na 1 meter apart distance ng mga attendee. So hindi na dito susukatin kung 50% ba ng capacity ng simbahan. Hindi talaga papasok yung PNP dito, yung mga barangay, ngunit sila yung magpapatupad niyan sa labas. So kinakailangan pati sa labas ng simbahan ay mapapanatili natin yung social distancing. Pagdating sa loob, ang gagawa nito ay pari na siyempre, yung presider niya, ushers, greeters and collectors, mga ministers kami, yung mga upuan ay mamarkahan na namin kung saan lang pwede silang umupo. And then kapag halimbawa nakita na hindi ka umupo doon sa tamang upuan, may marka na nga, sisitahin ka ng mga taong namin.
The priest added that churches are willing to adopt changes in the regular conduct of masses, especially in terms of the Holy Communion. This to prevent the spread of droplets that may contain the coronavirus.
Nakalagay yun doon sa guideline ng Archdiocese of Manila na unang-una, kamay talaga. Kapag mag-receive ng communion, papakita sa taong bayan, sa mga nagsisimba, na dinidisinfect talaga ng pari yung kamay niya, pati na yung mga lay ministers. Sinasabi namin sa communicant, the body of Christ, hindi na isa-isa. So, sa una pa lang, bago mag-start ng communion, sasabihin na ng pari, para na yun sa lahat. So that is to prevent also yung sinasabi nilang droplet. So yan yung mga innovations na gagawin.
US-based Moderna sees a glimmer of hope in its experimental COVID vaccine. The biotech firm says that based on early results from its human testing, the vaccine generated antibodies similar to those seen on persons who have recovered from the disease. 8 patients who received a 100 microgram dose and a 25 microgram dose had developed antibodies against the virus that even exceeded levels found in the blood of COVID recoveries. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again on Monday at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. I'm Jess De Los Santos. We are One News. Good evening.